Good. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. This is our second webinar of the series. We talked about how to register your business in Utah last night. So tonight we're going to talk about how to register your business in Arizona. And we have the amazing, wonderful Tadha to talk about how to register our business in Arizona. And I'm gonna turn it over to her so she can get started. She'll tell a little bit about her business, and then we'll get started with how to register your business in Arizona.
Great. Thank you, Cerila. Thanks for having me here. My name is Tadha Athone. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Kiowa tribe. I'm also a business owner and an attorney by trade, licensed in Colorado, the Navajo Nation, Tonto Apache, and soon to be Tohono O'odham. And I'm really honored and thankful to be here tonight. I really get to enjoy helping people start their companies and nonprofits and helping to see people achieve their dreams. So if you have wondered how to start a business here in Arizona, we're going to walk through that. We walked through some overviews of different entities last week, and now we're going to demonstrate how to actually go in and register a company in the state of Arizona. So thank you, Cerila. I think I have share screen, right? Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. We're going to come in. So if you're like me and don't save bookmarks and whatnot, you're probably going to come onto the internet and you're going to start searching. Now in the state of Arizona, unlike other states, we don't use the Secretary of State to register companies. We use the Arizona Corporation Commission. So if you were just going to come in and search in your like Google bar of places and start typing, you might put in Arizona Corporation Commission. And I'm hoping I go here a lot, so I'm hoping it's not going to pull up, but it might at the one, because what I wanted to demonstrate to you was that sometimes when you put in things like Corporation Commission or other things, you might get into companies like this or others that are not exactly the Arizona Corporation Commission. They're a company trying to sell you a service. They'll say, hey, for $300, we'll file everything for you. They're making money off the top just for filing. So you want to make sure when you come in that you find the Arizona Corporation Commission, and it'll have a .gov address after it. So always make sure you're at the .gov address. So when you get to the Arizona Corporation Commission, you're going to be in here. And as you can see across the top, it's got home, e-corporation, e-docket, live, news, calendar. So you're going to go into e-corp. You could also, if you came down here, come into this part and go into search corporations. If you wanted to look up companies, if you want to find out information about owners and where they're registered as a company, reserve your entity name if you haven't quite got everything down, but you've got a great name that you want to like lock in, or start a new corporation or LLC. So if you click in over here, it's going to throw you to the same place if you came in at the top at eCorp. So you would come in, expand a little bit more, try and get this. Okay. Let me get it. Here we go. You would come in here and you would set up an account. I've already got an account set up for purposes of today. We'll go into my account to sort of see what you would pop in with. Actually, multiple accounts for different businesses. So you're going to register with your email, set that up. And then once you've got into the dashboard through the creating an account, it's going to look like this. You're going to have my dashboard in the eCorp services. Now you'll have all of this correspondence, rejected file entities, but up here you've got online services, and you're going to start right here, or where it says create a new LLC back there. But I was come in here because online services has a whole bunch of other things that you might need at different times, such as, you know, change of address, statutory agent, which, as we all discussed, is the person who receives notice from the corporation commission regarding anything, or court notice if something happens. This is the person who essentially receives your mail for the business or notices. Anyway, so you're going to come in here to start a new business. And I'm a frequent user, but you might go through the guide me process. I mean, it is nice to always have a help. So we'll start here. You're going to be a frequent user once you get through this process. So when they're asking you some questions, it's going to say, I want to protect my personal assets as much as possible and minimize my risk for personal responsibility for the debts and other liabilities of my business. Yes. Yes, you do. You do want to protect your personal assets. And I want to be in business by myself or with partners and operate under doing business as or doing business as name. I don't mind if I'm personally responsible of the debts or liabilities of the business, and I understand that my personal assets would be at risk if a lawsuit is filed. Now, the difference here is, are you creating a limited liability company or are you creating a partnership? So here you could come in and say personal risks. I want to protect my personal assets. Avoid this question unless you're creating a partnership. So limited partnerships or limited liability companies. This is where we discussed if you had one or more partners. Last night, essentially you would have, as it has here, a general partner and then limited partners. Now this general partner is still at risk on their liabilities if something were to happen within this partnership. It's not an LLC, so we're not going to focus on that tonight. What we are going to focus on tonight, because we discussed from a lot of other, or from a previous meeting, that limited liability companies is probably what everybody is forming here at this stage, whether or not you are a member or a single member or a multiple member LLC. We're going to focus here tonight. We also talked about corporations, and here they have S Corps and C Corps. Really, you're filing a C Corp and getting taxed as an S Corp at the IRS level, and then nonprofit corporations, which are still businesses, just being taxed at different rates, not at all, and also have different ways of raising revenue. So here we're going to talk about forming a limited liability company tonight. Do you have a question, Cerila? I can't see you in case you do.
I'm sorry. No questions.
Okay. And Michael, if you have any questions, please feel free to like step in and ask questions. I meant to say that last night, Cerila, and then I was like, oh, yeah, we were sort of going through. So, and Michael, I might make you the sort of guinea pig of what you might want to create in a business here.
No problem. No problem.
Unless you like log off because you're like, this is, you know, limited liability.
No, yeah, I like this. You know, it's good learning.
Okay, well, good to hear. I'm glad. Thank you. Glad it's I hope it's helpful to someone. So here we're going to start focusing on limited liability companies. Again, this is essentially what you can do as a one member or multiple members within a company. It shields everybody from liability as opposed to a partnership or a limited partnership where one person is still getting exposed to liability for the partnership activities, if you will. And the professional limited liability company, you're probably only going to need to create in the state of Arizona if you are a licensed realtor and you want to get paid essentially by the sale to your company rather than to you as an individual. And then you need to register this. Otherwise, we used to, as attorneys, have to create a professional limited liability company, or doctors had to create professional limited liability companies. But that actually gets regulated through your licensure agency. So whoever issues your professional license dictates whether or not you would need that. And currently, as of 2022, you don't need that unless you're really a realtor in this state. So we're going to focus here on limited liability companies. Excuse me. So if we have a name, Michael, you want to propose a business name? If not, we came up with one last night, but I'd love to hear your business name. We'll see if it.
Well, yeah. Well, so the company I'm in with now, they're called Serenity by Santiago, and it's my father-in-law who owns the company. His name is Luis Santiago. But I always had a kind of an idea for something in the future, and it would be Harmony by Heinrichs, which is my last name. So.
Harmony.
And then HEINRI,
H-
no D, RICHS,
Okay. All right.
and no E also, no E.
No E. I was gonna say, did I add in it? There we go.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Harmony by Hendricks. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's gonna ask us to put the LLC in here. Notice again, Cerila, how that was different, right? We had a drop down last night in Utah here. They're saying you've got to put it in right here just to make sure. So we're gonna go all over again. Harmony by HEINRIC, right? Heinrichs?
I have a question, Tadha.
Oh, with the R, yeah.
Why is the LLC necessary at the end? Is it,
Oh, yeah, that's, oh, sorry, you can finish, but that's a great question.
yeah, that's it. I was just wondering why it has to be an LLC at the end.
Yeah, so what that does is it distinguishes to people how you're operating as an entity, essentially. So if you create an LLC, you might have, as it popped up, right, you've got to have those distinctions, either limited liability company spelled out, L period dot C period. And the reason that is again about the entity. So as a corporation, you see either Inc., company, corp, and essentially what it tells other people is what that entity is. In that sense. That sounds a little bit like you can't take really LLCs and then put them out onto like the stock exchange in that sense. They're not for public offerings. In order to do that, you have to transfer into a corporation and create stock, those types of things. And so it really helps other people to identify who might be involved as well. Like you can't operate a partnership without another person. So that tells people that there has to be at least somebody else going on in this business. You can operate a sole proprietor without any of these distinctions. But it is really just about a signatory for others to also understand, that there could be other members involved. There might not be other members involved. This might be a public offering company or a publicly exchanged company versus just a small mom and pop shop. So that's essentially what that is.
Okay, good to know. I always wanted to know, like, why do I gotta put LLC back there?
Yeah. Or why does it have to say limited liability company, right? And that's just it. And you'll see a lot of people sort of drop that distinguish, but when it comes down to like putting things on paper, right, you won't see a lot of Incs or LLCs or corps. You'll just see those names. But when it comes to legally, you are this, and that's how you're going to write your paperwork for other people, and to just like to demonstrate that what that is. I put it on my letterhead and stuff if I have my name spelled out in that type of thing, versus like if I'm printing a logo or something. And so that's why. That was a great question. Long explanation, but hopefully now you understand. So for instance, in that, to actually go on to that, if we weren't creating an LLC, we couldn't come in, for instance, and put corp. You go, nope. Must not contain any of the following identifiers: association, corporation, incorporated, or any of these abbreviations, right? Here's what we can put: a limited company, limited liability company, and an LLC. That's it. These are our identifiers for Arizona. So it just lets, again, everyone know what sort of legal entity it is. Did I get it? Do you want it with an apostrophe or just with an S?
Just an S is fine.
Okay. We're gonna make sure. Great, it's available. So there you go. If you wanted to claim
Hopefully
that
it stays that way for a while.
yeah, I was gonna say, just so you know, if you wanted to claim that name without actually filing anything, if you remember back on this online services, there was like a name registration, and you could just register the name without actually doing anything outside of reserving it, like reserve the name.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm gonna have to actually look into that then. Yeah, definitely.
right? In case someone else named Heinrich is out there trying to start like, I don't know, when a music tuning shop or something.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. You never know. But
Right.
yeah, it's good to know. I see there's things that I'm learning. I didn't, build the LLC myself, so it's good to learn all these things, small little details.
It is definitely, especially if you want to start subsidiary companies under that, and in which case, we'll get into that in a little bit. That other LLCs can own other LLCs. LLCs cannot own nonprofits, but nonprofits can own an LLC. Okay, so
Wow.
we're going to put in my email address just because it'll make it easy. And go forward.
Participant, Tadha. Hi, Feliha.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, 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 good.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm just I'm doing in between because I am trying to I'm at my boy ball practice and trying to fit everything in, the mom duties and everything else in between. So I am super engaged, but just on mute in between boys
No
yelling
worries.
and
Okay, well, we won't ask you any questions then, but thank you. Okay.
questions are good. It keeps me engaged. I'm just keeping on in the meantime.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, you have a mismatch. We're just forming an LLC, Heinrichs, Harmony by Heinrichs. The name is available. And we're going to put in some generic information in order to move forward in filing this articles. So we will carry forward. So here we are at step 2. And we're going to make it effective today. You could make this effective in the future if you wanted to, but you couldn't make it effective backwards, just so you know. So if for some reason you wanted to delay when you might actually create that business, that would be, you could actually set it for a later date, but generally everyone's going to just leave this alone, this effective date. There's no really reason to mess with that at this stage.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So when, let's say that is available like on here, but it's not available as far as like a website name, or does this doesn't sync up to like buying a domain name, right?
It does not. It definitely does not sync up to buying a domain name. This is just at the state level. And you might find, for instance, that like you register your name here, but you couldn't go to like Nevada and register the same name because somebody's already got that name there. But at the state level, it's just for here. Yes. So nothing to do with domain names.
Okay, and then if someone on here, like if someone has this, and I believe, I'm not sure if this is the case with domain names, but on here, then let's say someone has that name, or is there like a certain amount of time they're able to have that name, or is it available for purchase after a certain point, or is that something entirely different too?
No, it all flows together. So it's a great question. I actually just dealt with this with somebody else recently. And so, yes, in some sense of if somebody isn't using their name. So for instance, if we came in here and found that Harmony by Heinrichs had been a corporation back in 1970 and it had gone inactive and wasn't being used, then we would potentially be able to take that name and use it. However, there are situations where someone's using a name and it's so similar to what you're doing, and also in a similar vein, like any legal purpose of what you're doing, that you won't be able to use that name. And as long as that corporation or company or LLC stays active, then that name will never be available to you. Because, and also, just so you know, if there is a name that you go out and start using that's pretty similar to another company's name, those companies can actually come out and put you in a, I'm sorry, I forgot the word right now, but it'll essentially say, hey, you can't do that. Your name is similar and you can't use your name and logo similar to our name and things like that. So they'll make you stop essentially. And I can't think of what that is right now. The word, it'll like come to me in the middle of like doing this, but essentially they'll like request you to like a cease and desist letter to like essentially stop using that. And not be able to do that. So I would really suggest that you try to distinguish your names rather than try to get into like
Okay.
something over a name. Now, in this situation where I had with somebody else, they actually previously owned the name to another company that they had like go inactive from like 20, 30 years ago. And now they want to come back and use that name again. And so that's the argument they're going to have to make to the Corporation Commission, which is, I just want to use it as an LLC. Before, now it was, I want to use it as an LLC now. Before it was a corporation, and that corporation has been inactive. So it may, when they're filing on this online, allowed to just pass right through. May. I haven't actually had that situation occur before. Usually people's names are pretty different as far as like this online filing service. So I would be interested to see what would happen. I didn't walk them through that process, but that's, you know, just for your information, that's how that works.
Okay, sorry, I have one more question now that you said that, and then I'll stop asking questions. You can go on.
Please, this is the time to ask questions. I promised you ladies last week I would be on the phone till all the questions were answered. So you've got time to ask questions. I may just not be able to answer them if they're like personally directed to your business. It has to be about education.
Okay. No, I think it's generally, so let's say that that would be the entity name, right? Like Harmony by Heinrichs. And if that's the case, or LLC after it, then are you able, your domain name, does it have to match that or be something similar, or it can be something entirely different?
It could be something entirely different. Really, it doesn't have to be the same as your name up there. Now, is that going to be helpful for your customers? Maybe. You know, is it helpful to have your company name be your domain name? Generally, it helps, but maybe there's a shortened version that you can use as a domain name that's similar to your company name, because really what happens on the web has nothing to do with what happens on the Corporation Commission website, or as far as like the registration at the corporation level. Does that help answer that question? Oh, I think. Did you all hear what she said?
No.
That was a little muffled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Alicia,
sorry.
could
Sorry,
you
can you
repeat
hear me?
yourself? Or, sorry,
Can you hear me now?
a little bit better. It's sort of cutting in and out. Okay.
I think it's my service, but that that was very helpful, and that makes a lot of sense now.
Great. Good. I'm glad. I hope I answered the question. Any more? Michael, any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And also, just also on that domain name, you wouldn't have to include LLC in your domain name. You could just have like harmonybyheinrichs.com. Now, what I would recommend though, when you're buying domains, and this is just like me as a business person, having run a business and running businesses, if you're going to buy one name, you might want to buy like .net, you know, all the other ones once you like buy a name, because at some point websites do actually start to generate value. In fact, I'm now figuring out how people like get paid from the web traffic that they receive on their websites. And so because I do get traffic from my website, I can direct my traffic to other people's traffic. And then that builds almost like the value of my website and that domain name itself. So you do want to be mindful of that if you intend to have a web presence, that you actually purchase the other, you know, domain names at the time and get the .net done. And you can purchase the domain name without having to purchase the hosting. Those are two different things, especially through different websites. And so in some sense you can, in some sense you can just purchase that and pay for it annually versus purchasing like all that hosting at the same time, just those names. Okay, so before we get logged out, we're going to go on. So we're going to make this effective, and we were right here about character of business. So I generally always put any legal purpose. We discussed this last night, which is that if you choose something like retail trade or finance and insurance, then you really can only do finance and insurance, and you can really only do construction. You can't be over there like doing legal services if you're saying you're doing construction. So in order to make it broad and you can pretty much do almost anything, any legal purpose under your business, I would select that, because that way it just allows you to pivot within your business as opposed to constantly coming back and updating the character of business that you're describing. And perpetual duration. So you could choose to not do this, but as you see, it's all going to be perpetual until you terminate. You can't really like end it. Now, the reason this question is there is because if you had a corporation, you could set like an end date for corporations. And so because corporations originally were sort of created under our laws as a country to do big social works like build bridges or build big large buildings at first in order to essentially mitigate the risk for the investors, especially when we're talking about social projects that aren't necessarily economically driven in that sense. And so you could terminate a corporation and say, hey, we're only going to come together to build this bridge across this canal, and or build this canal, and that's all we're doing. And then after that is accomplished, we are going to dissolve this corporation. But for LLCs, they expect that you're pretty much just going to be doing it until you file termination paperwork. Excuse me. Which also would lead us back to something we discussed last week, which is operating agreements. So in your operating agreements, you really want to make sure you're addressing what termination looks like in your operating agreement. What does it look like if you have to dissolve your company? What does it look like if you are a multi-member LLC and one member dies, or one member gets a divorce, or one member becomes incapacitated? What does that look like in your company, and how do you address those issues? There are plenty of times where people have been married, had really great businesses, and then they get a divorce, and that person comes after half the business. Now, if they're with other business partners, as other business partners who are suddenly like, wait, we were doing business with you, now we're doing business with your spouse, maybe not so cool, but she's taking half the money while you're still expected to do all of the work for the business. So those are all things that can be outlined and addressed within an operating agreement. Is there a transfer of ownership in that membership or not? And again, with the deaths, we did have some people who died last year who were single member LLCs. And because there was no essentially anything in their documents that stated what happened when that single member LLC, when the single member died or became incapacitated, the LLC just got dissolved, where there could have been a transfer of ownership. Okay, if the single member, the one member dies, then maybe that ownership transfers to a child, and that child, if they're of age and want to run the business, could run the business. But without any of that, it just dissolves as a single member LLC. And also, depending on what your operating agreement says, it could dissolve if everybody just, half the people, you have 4 members and 2 people say, well, we want to close down the business, then could dissolve that way. Or you could address in your operating agreement that maybe if 2 people want to carry it on, they can do that themselves and not have to, again, purchase out the other partners or not purchase out the other partners. All these things that get addressed in those operating agreements. So, okay, next thing, statutory agents. Here we are talking again about who is this person? Oh, excuse me. So it's asking, is your statutory agent an existing business registered with the Arizona Corporation Commission? We discussed this last week about the statutory agents. You as yourself can be a statutory agent for your own company, but you can also hire somebody to be a statutory agent for your company. Now, there are really 2 reasons for this, or really just the one, which is privacy. Do you want your address shared out there on the public domain? Because in Arizona, I can go look up essentially anything. They're like, as far as businesses that are registered, you can see a lot of information on the Arizona Corporation website. And this is actually why other businesses will get formed in places like Delaware or Wyoming or Nevada, because when you go to search at that E Corp level, they actually charge. So maybe allow you to see the first page, who's the statutory agent, who's this person. But if you want to find out this information, the principal address, the principal, like all this type of stuff, you're going to pay for it. And so that sort of deters people. Again, this is about privacy because some people don't want to be known as being in businesses, or some people, as businesses get, Elon Musk doesn't want his information, out on the Arizona Corporation website for all of us to just go easily find and figure out where he's living. So in that sense, you hire a company, and in Arizona, they're as little as $40. In other states, it can be as much as $100 to $400, depending on which state you're filing in. In some states, actually require you to hire a company to be your statutory agent. There's no getting around it. That's what you're going to do. In Arizona, as long as you're living in the state of Arizona, you can be your own statutory agent. So we're going to say no in this sense. And we would fill out our own information. So I'm going to go ahead, just plop in my name. Should be plopping in Michael's name since it's Harmony by Heinrichs. And go ahead and create the agent. So then what's going to happen here is plop in the information. Let's continue without it. Okay, we're in Harmony Street and statutory agent street address, mailing address. Now somebody might have two different mailing addresses. Let's say we have post office box. And this is McClintock. It's a road or a drive. Okay. Here you're always going to need to have a physical address. And again, that physical address has to be there because they need to know where to show up to like deliver something. If it's coming back in the mail, where can we physically find this person to come and bring it to them? And here the email address, notice it's like completely, you got to have it. Okay. So when this email address gets put in for the statutory agent, because again, you might have a company or you might have somebody else who's operating as a statutory agent, they're going to receive an email that actually requests them to respond to the email within a certain time frame. And that essentially is the acceptance of the statutory agent. So if you put somebody else's name in here and you don't, it's not your email address going in, it's somebody else's, you have to make sure that they know that they're going to be receiving an email that they need to respond to. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to put in my email for right now. And we're done. Okay, great. So if we had chosen this entity, it would have asked us to either look for an entity or to put that entity's information in. If you look up on the web, you can find statutory agents that you can hire, and then they'll provide that information that you would populate, including the email to put in. Do you all have any questions before I go into principal address?
No, none here.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so same as statutory on the principal address. So principal address for this sense is essentially like, where's your principal office? Like, is it your home? Is it an office space that you've rented? Where is this office that you are running in the principal place of business? So for our purposes, we're going to say that essentially it's the same as the street address, because we're going to assume that most of us are maybe starting our businesses out of our homes. Some of us might be starting it with an office space, but for I think a lot of women, we probably start our businesses at the kitchen tables. Okay, so we're gonna go back here and move forward. Okay, so when we come to manager member information, we are going to talk again about that management style. It's going to ask, are you a manager managed LLC or a member managed LLC? And if you recall from last week, what I had explained is that when you're a manager managed LLC, what it means is you've hired somebody else to be running the day-to-day affairs of your organization. You've got a manager that operates and organizes almost like a CEO would of a corporation as an officer. However, when you're a member managed LLC, what that means is that you as the owner, you as the principal person owning or principal people owning the company are the ones doing the day-to-day activities of the organization. You're turning in the paperwork yourself, you're filing things, you're really handling that as the owner. And so we're going to select that we are a member managed LLC, meaning that we are doing it ourselves. And here, if you can see where it says, is this an entity or is this an individual? Now, remember how I said that a nonprofit can own an LLC, but an LLC can't own a nonprofit. So it could be, for instance, a nonprofit who was starting this as a single member LLC, or it could be, it's not going to let me choose. And also, just FYI, should have started at the beginning with this. I've had a lot of technical issues with the website before. So if you have technical issues, don't be afraid. Reach out to them, say that there are technical issues that have been occurring, because sometimes there have been glitches on their side when they make updates, when you go into mess or go into update things or go into change something. So if you start to see some sort of like weird thing like that, where you're like, oh, I can't change that. I wonder if it'll allow us, if we switch over here, to change it. See, that's just kind of a glitch that's occurring. And then you have to let them know, because if, for instance, you were an LLC wanting to own another LLC, which could totally happen. Say Harmony by Heinrichs LLC wants to own Accord by Heinrichs, I don't know, LLC, then we would be choosing entity. But since it's not going to let us do that, we'll just go with hopefully what it'll allow us to populate tonight and allow us to move forward. So as a member, oh, maybe that was why I want to, it was weird. Okay, wouldn't allow us to do that. We'll just go with the individual. I'm going to say owning this, and the date I'm taking office is today. There may be times when, again, like you were going to put something out, maybe this corporation is going to get formed in 2 weeks and you're getting everything together. That's the date that person's officially going to take office. But today is the 27th. So we're going with here. I'm taking office today. And I'm not putting anything there as far as middle name. But excuse me, if you sign and you always sign your name, Tadha A. Athone, and I put that there, then you better sign your name, Tadha A. Athone, at the end, because it's not going to allow you to sign otherwise unless you sign with the full. So I'm leaving it alone. Okay. Now, again, with the kitchen tables, if we're looking at the same as the principal address, so say you're starting it at your kitchen table, you're going to populate it again. But if you happen to be fortunate and starting it at the office down the street, maybe you live at a different location and you're just going to populate that. You get to live. Okay. You live in Arizona, you might live someplace else, you might have partners that are in Connecticut or another state. So an owner could be completely out of state and still be owning this, but for our intensive purposes, we're going to assume everybody is in the state for right now. Okay, now if you have more principals, so maybe you have more than one member, maybe you're going into business with your father-in-law, then you're going to add another principal. It's going to populate the first principal, and now you're going to add the second principal and move forth. Now, what is in here is that it doesn't actually document here percentages. So you get to add principals, but if you want to document outside of the default, so say you had 4 people, they all come together. By default, if you do nothing else, such as not upload a document here, then it's going to default and say everyone owns 25%, pretty much almost by default. So that's where you would again spell out your bylaws or appear and uploaded documents in your articles of organization. You would upload a separate document if you had separate, maybe you have 4 members that come together, but 3 of them own 90% of the company, each owning 30%, and 1 owns 10%. Then you would spell that out in a separate articles of organization that would list out all this information again, but list out beside everybody's name down here, or not down here, but everyone who you're including here in these articles of organization uploaded here, would then say, okay, member A, member B, and member C, they own 30% each, and then member D, he owns 10%. And that's how that would be spelled out. So if you do have something like that, you want to make sure you're uploading that document with this that will allow you to essentially spell that out for the corporation commission, who owns what or what percentage. If you're a single member LLC, you're just going to populate that and then go into next. Okay. So articles of organization, who's the organizer? That's essentially who's the incorporator. If you're filing for yourself, then you're essentially putting your name into this spot. So I'm going to do that again. However, there are times when, for instance, if you have a multi-member LLC, one person is the person being the incorporator or the organizer. In this case, for LLCs, you're an incorporator if you're doing a corporation. And in which case, then they're just putting in their information. So who's the person populating this form? That's essentially me. Anyone have any questions? Making sure.
Nope.
Nope, I'm good.
Good to hear. Hopefully that means I've either explained it really well or I didn't explain it well at all and you're just like, but it's pretty okay.
You explained it well. It seems like you already know all the questions, and it seems like you're already answering them before even moving on. I like it. It's good. You're hitting a lot of good details.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay.
I just hope when I go back to do this, I can navigate it with as much ease as you're doing it right now.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Well, they're recording it, so you'll be able to watch it again. So as you saw, I just added organizer, says I was there, and then hit next. Okay, so this is where it talks about the upload documents. And I know I just discussed this, but I'm going to talk about it again. So you might want to upload different membership interests within your documents. But what you're not uploading here is your operating agreement. So specifically, if you upload something that says it's an operating agreement to the Corporation Commission, they'll automatically reject it and send it back and say, nope, we don't take operating agreements. We don't do that. What they accept is articles of organization. So your title document would say articles of organization. It would literally spell out all of this information, the entity information, who the statutory agent is, who the principal address is of the organization, who the principals are, like the owners, the organizer information, and then uploading that document into this file. So if you have anything that is different in your membership documents, then you would want to do this. If you are a single member LLC who's just sort of defaulting to 100% interest or 100% ownership, In that sense, then you don't need to worry about uploading some separate articles of organization. You could just default to what the state is going to do, which is allow you to just use their form. That's why they've asked you all these questions and you populated all the information. So then you just hit next, because we're not gonna do that. I was my own person. In here, you would hit I agree. Being as I haven't actually entered any information, I'm not going to agree here because all of that, as you know, is not correct. But then you would sign here. And again, where I had mentioned, however you populate this name in the organizer information. So if you use junior in that title, then you need to sign the same way here in order for it to get it to accept in the system. And then if you have a title, you're either an authorized agent or you're an organizer. Your authorized agent is going to be someone like a power of attorney, somebody else authorized to act for you, which is generally an attorney. But you could give a power of attorney to somebody, for instance, and then otherwise you're an organizer. You're yourself the organizer. You don't need to select that if you were operating as your own person organizing the corporation, the LLC. So there you go. So then once you add this, it literally takes you into the review. I guess I'm just going to do it and we'll see, because we're not going to click anything. This 123 Sesame Street. Add, here we go. There's my signature. And then you're going to review your information, make sure it's correct. So make sure, for instance, you've got the right email address. You didn't accidentally, I don't know, enter an extra A or something. And really do make sure you're correct, because every time I go back and proofread something, I'm like, I swear I didn't enter that. I swear that's not the word I said, or I put a .com there. And once you make sure, so essentially, again, we said we didn't upload any separate articles that would spell out information like multiple member LLCs would. Once you do that, you go to payment details. I'm not going to click there because then it really just is asking for a payment. What I will say is once you would get here, it's going to ask you if you just want to do a regular filing, and that can take up to a month to get reviewed by the state. But if you're in a hurry for $35 more, you can choose to do an expedited filing, and that's going to essentially file it immediately. And within a week, you should be getting some response. So as long as everything was filled out correctly, and where I have had situations occur before with a filing was when we filled out all this information, we forgot in the articles of incorporation to change literally one word. We went from at 1.3 board members to 5 board members, but forgot to change the word 3 to 5. And it kept getting kicked back and kicked back and kicked back. And finally we figured it all out, because they were like, well, it's all right, except for this like one word in your articles that you uploaded the document to. And that's why it's getting kicked back. So make sure again, like everything is spelled out the same within here. And if you say that you have 3 board members, don't have 5 listed in that. But once that gets uploaded, it'll go through, you can pay online, which is really nice and convenient. So if we were to click, let's just see what happens. If we were to click here and see the statutory agent electronically accepts. So remember, they would have to go in, they're going to get an email saying you've been appointed a statutory agent. Do you want to accept? Yes, if so, come in and sign the document. Yay. So here we were in the expedited, same day for 200 if you're really desperate. That's really only if you're like probably trying to find some sort of like partnership really quickly, or a joint venture, or maybe you need it for who knows what. Anyways, you can pay an extra fee. Usually $50 is fine if you're not in a massive hurry to get things started, but maybe you are. And then definitely just go for $85. It makes the most sense. It comes back within a week. Okay, so I'm gonna get out of here. Let's get out. Go back to my dashboard. And as you see, it's gonna now show up in my unfinished filings over here. And I'm not gonna process that because, you know, Harmony. Michael, you want to use this name in whatever dream you have of owning Harmony by Heinrichs. I hope you do form it. As you can see, it's relatively easy. Once you pay the filing fee, you're essentially going to then get a receipt that says that you've paid, so you could come in and see if you had done something. As you can see, I've recently filed. If you get rejected, it's going to come in here. That got rejected, right? For whatever reason at the time. And if you see any messages, they're going to send you messages here and say, hey, you need to take a look at this and check this out. So that's essentially where it is. If you don't finish filings, you can come back. And here you might have different things. So say you got all the way to the payment and now you want to come in here and pay for your shopping cart. There might be other things that you might do, like reserve a name, right? Where if you just wanted to go and reserve Harmony by Heinrichs, you can do that in here. Or also, if you need to come in again in these online services, you're going to find things like annual filings. You don't need to do that if you're an LLC. You're not really going to file that. That's really more for corporations, but maybe you need to change your address of those statutory agents. You need to add different members. You want to dissolve a business or restructure that business, like you're taking half the people out, or you are going from an LLC to a corporation instead, because now you want to go for a public offering. Because generally, if you want to raise large amounts of money, you're going to have to give out more in equity, and that's more easily transferable through stock than it is through LLC membership agreements. And so that's pretty much it on starting a new business. Do you have any questions about forming LLCs or any questions that might have come up, not necessarily related to this? I mean, to, you know, the filings, but more in depth on LLCs or corporations or things that you wanted to ask?
Actually, yeah, I have a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'll
No,
let you
you
go
can
first.
go.
It's
No,
a
it's
quick one.
okay.
It should be pretty easy. So say you're a single member and you don't have your own articles of organization. And so when you fill out the whole, when you follow all the steps, you fill it all out, does it generate that kind of document for you once you're all finished with that? Do you get some sort of article or organization document built when you enter all your info?
Yeah, so essentially they're not gonna like plop out a document, it's gonna plop out a receipt, and then your articles kind of just come up in the e-corps. So if we were to go, hold on, let me come back. I'm trying to think of a corporation I started that has a single member LLC real quick. Let me see if I can find something. Or do you all know someone who owns a single member LLC? I feel like I'm in a brain fart real quick.
Oh, I do. You can search under me.
Okay, cool, awesome, thank you. 'Cause I was like, who do I know is just a single member? Okay, so we're gonna come here. Oh, entity search. And Cerila. Oh, wait, Cerila, what's your name?
Oh, Orchestrating Your Success LLC. I put it in the chat if you want to just copy paste.
Oh, did you? That's so easy. Let me see if I can copy and paste it. Okay, wait, your success. Yep. It's there. Okay. And Cerila, do you remember when you filed your LLC, did you use just the online filing?
I actually did it by paper, but you know what? Actually, hold on. Let me give you this because this is actually the name.
I was gonna say, because that apparently says you're not in here.
I forgot the try that one. It's OYS Orchestrating Your Success.
Oh, okay. YS dash. I am teaching a class. You're gonna have to wait for a second. Here we go. And if you did it by paper, then did you fill out the form at the Corporation Commission website, or where you had to go in before they had the online filings where you could like fill it out?
Actually, I think I filled it out online and then I printed it and then I took it to the office.
Okay, yeah, they're like form that you could populate before. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so you then essentially she used the standard form. What they would have done is uploaded it. So you could see her document history, and here's her articles. Hold on, they're recording and they can see you and hear you. This is my daughter. She's going to hopefully run some sort of business that she enjoys later on in life. But that'll be the older one who's gonna take over or run her own empire of businesses at some point. She's already learning how to like sell things and all of that. So let me see if I can get out of this chat. So this is that form that Cerila had mentioned that they used to have online, and they still do if you want to use it and you want to physically go to the Corporation Commission and file it. There could be some reasons for that. You may not have stable internet issues, or you have documents that you want to upload, such as that articles of organization that you're going to use with this form as well. And maybe you don't have a good, again, internet connection, so you want to make sure they get it. Then you would literally walk it in. It's over in downtown. But now that they have online registering, there's no need to do that. You can start a business from the comfort of your kitchen table, literally, or your couch. Before she would have filed this, and this is essentially what's going to pop up. So you're going to see something really similar. If she had filed this online, you'd be seeing something very similar as far as these questions populate into a form once your corporation or LLC gets listed on here. So if you were waiting, let's say we had sort of pushed forth and filed Heinrichs. In fact, I guess we could have asked if anybody actually wanted to file a business tonight, and we could have done that. We could take you right through the process if you're like ready to go on filing a company. But what you would then see is at the end, we could come right into search for an entity name, and it's going to pop up your name, just like Heinrichs or Harmony for Heinrichs LLC. And over here at entity status, it would say pending. So it's going to like instantaneously get you into the system, versus if you do what Cerila did and what a lot of us did before they had this online filing, right? Which is like physically come and drop this organization off, and then in like a week or two it would show up on the eCorp to look for that information.
Now, if you guys, Tadha, if you scroll back up, you'll see that I have 2 file numbers at the very top. So I actually filled this out wrong, and the problem was I had put manage member instead of member managed. So that's why you see like I filed actually in November, and then I had to correct it, and then they had to refile in December, and that's when that member managed and managed member, that was really confusing.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I mean, yes, if the management of the LLC will be vested in a manager or managers will run the company, like I wish they would just define what a manager is, right? Like it would just make sense, because it is confusing between, is it a member managed LLC or a manager managed LLC? And maybe it defined it in these instructions someplace. But now the manager managed LLC pretty much means, do you have an employee who you're paying to like run this, versus are you doing it yourself or the owner's doing it? So you learned firsthand, right, about that, Cerila.
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, and as you can see though, look, everything is public. So if this happened to be Cerila's home, I'm going to assume it's not, but let's say it was, right? Now it's all public information. And if this happens to be her personal like mailbox that she's using, now it's public information. And in all states, you would be able to get to this information for a little bit of money. to find out the statutory agent, because everybody needs to know that if they might have something going on legally that needs to happen, or I don't know, say a dump truck's driving down the road and, you know, they swerve you off and whatever, you need to be able to identify where that company comes from and how to get a hold of them. And then affidavit of publication. So if you're outside of Maricopa, and it sounds like here you had to publish something, they don't make you do that now anymore if you're in Maricopa. Doing this publication that lets people know that you're out, so you don't really have to worry about this anymore, which is really nice if you're in this, like right here in Maricopa County, because they're publicizing it on their website as opposed to making you run it. But if you're outside, so if you happen to be up in like, I don't know, Canyon, what is it, Sierra Vista, or like Page or other places, you might have to run this publication, and they're going to tell you, depending on your location, if you have to run this publication. And essentially what you are doing is letting people know that you've started this company, or if you start a nonprofit, they're going to request that you put it out. So as you can see, Cerila had to do this. Had she waited a few more years, I don't know, in Peoria with that Tempe address, she probably wouldn't have had to have done this. And as she chose a Peoria Times, I'm going to assume that was probably one of the cheaper publications she could find. You could run something in like the penny ads, and a lot of people, this actually came up the other day about notices for probate. If you ever see those legal notices, whether it's in the Peoria Times or the Navajo Times or the Arizona Republic, there will be legal notices, and those legal notices are for things like this: hey, I started a company, or I started a nonprofit, or hey, this person died, and if you're a creditor, then be known that we're probating their estate. So if you've got, you know, money that they owe you, you need to come and make a claim, because otherwise we're going to probate and it's all going to be done. So there are some interests and good points to reading some of those legal disclosures, especially if you are looking for whether or not something might have started in someone's like death, as far as their probates concerned are going, if you're a creditor or if you happen to be an heir. Or in this case, you know, if you're looking to start a nonprofit, you're definitely going to have to run it outside of Maricopa. But now within the Maricopa County, registering your business, you don't have to do this anymore as of like 2018 or so. So
I paid $35. That was like the cheapest one I could get. I remember that. I was like, well, it costs so much to run this. Yeah, it was $35.
Right. But when you're starting a business, $35 means a lot, right? Where I'm like, oh, you can just pay $35 for an expedited. But I remember starting a business and being like, no, I'll wait. I will wait. I don't need that right now. It's okay. 30 days is fine. You know, like, it all just depends on where you're at, right? As far as like with that. So yeah, and you do want to look for a cheaper publication that you can run those documents if you do have to run them in the newspaper.
Ooh.
Do you all have any questions? I think we lost one of our participants.
Yeah, Faliha says she had to jump off, but thank you for joining, Faliha.
Yeah. Shout out to you.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any questions?
No, that was it. That was all.
Great.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing up and spending time with us. And I do hope that whenever you go to form Harmony by Heinrichs or Harmony for Heinrichs.
Harmony by Heinrichs, yeah.
Harmony by Heinrichs. Okay, then that you know, it's a step easier for you. And you
definitely, yeah. I definitely learned something tonight. Yeah, I've never seen that before. I only know of it because I'm part of an LLC, and I'm starting to do more and more of the office work and getting into that kind of transition, because the future plan is to take over, but it's a long road. Lots to learn from on my end.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, you'll want to make sure when anyone's looking at succession plans within companies that, again, those are addressed in like the operating agreements if they are LLCs, or in articles of if you're a corporation, it would be in the bylaws. And so essentially that will spell out, right, what happens if members do die, or what happens if there is a transfer of ownership. And that can be addressed. And I always recommend people do this when things are good in companies, not when you're like, when things are like going badly. So if you're going to form a company, or be a part of companies, coming into companies, people buying companies, really make sure that you understand how the operating agreements work and how those ownerships and membership transfers can occur. And so that you do understand what you're getting into, because it all kind of spells it out in the operating agreement. But make sure you do it when it's good, when things are happy.
Yeah.
It's like prenups.
No,
So,
definitely,
you
definitely,
know,
yeah, absolutely.
everyone's happy, definitely. So and succession plans are good things to have for everybody, especially if you're trying to create legacy businesses. Always make sure you spell out some sort of succession plan within the operating agreement that allows for those transfers.
Most definitely. Okay, thank you for that. Good to
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, and the administration, Cerila knows, the administration by itself, right? Especially if you have employees, if you start to like do other things, just alone, I probably spend a day or two of my time right now running administration, a month on businesses. And that's like, you know, all that sort of back end stuff, taxes and accounting, and making sure, you know, the emails are all whatever. The administration on top of just filing, especially once you start, if you do start to have employees, will start to be, it's a lot more administration that it has
Right,
to.
yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
kind of starting to learn some of that stuff, but it's still a learning process for myself. Most definitely.
Well, I feel you on that. I'm still learning it.
Yeah,
Whole learning process. It is.
that's why I
But
always
you
join
know,
these classes, because there's always something to learn. I always at least like to take something away, and um, what you're saying about the succession plans and the operating agreement, that's something that I need to look into and make sure we have in place.
yes, everybody should make sure they have something like that in
I'm
place.
sure Lewis, my boss, he's got it all, but I don't know it off the top of my head just yet, so I can't say yes or no. So I need to make it to where I know these things like that.
Well, I feel like the succession planning, a lot of people don't think about, and I honestly didn't think about when I first started a company. So I didn't have some of those things spelled out within the operating agreement. And the more we got into things, the more we figured out that things like that had to be in there. For instance, we had a couple of partner transfers that occurred. And so we needed to spell out what happened with the members. And yeah, as I'm noticing and talking to my community, you know, I'm finding that a lot of single member LLCs don't have bylaws or operating agreements at all. I'm not going to ask
Right. Yeah.
you
And that's
what's an
something that I
operating.
need
I'm
to
not going to throw
address
you on the
if we
spot, but
don't. I need to make sure that we do have some in place. That's just something, I mean, we may, but myself, I couldn't say where, I'd have to go into the main office and find it or have a talk with him, but it's something that I definitely want to make sure that we have in place.
yeah, and that's something for everybody. Even Cerila, if you've got, you know, an operating agreement amongst yourself, it's helpful for others. And I do teach classes on wills, and have done wills trainings for people. And, you know, it all kind of spells out. It helps to just understand what should happen with things, and what to happen if there is a transfer. You know, if you are running a company and you've got tons of employees, or even just a few employees, or you've got contracts, right? What's going to happen if there are subs that could take over those contracts, but now the company is gone because a single member LLC, like, I don't know, either closed up shop or decided that, yeah, whatever wasn't going to
Yeah,
happen.
because if somebody
Right.
dissolves and it's not in place, and it just, they die, then it
Or
dissolves.
they die, or someone gets COVID. I mean, I had another client recently where their accountant died. She caught COVID and died, and they like knew that she was getting sick, and then she like died in 2 weeks, right? And she was a single member LLC, also a single member accountant. So for in their sense, it was like, luckily they were able to get their books transferred as she was dying, right? Because she was like, they were already in the process of transferring accounts, but had that not already been in the place, then she would have died. All their folks were caught up with her, and everything is dissolved essentially with her as well. So that just
Yeah, it's
those are
very
things
important.
that should be and also wills, right? Just no one wants to talk about, again, some of those like unpleasant. Everyone's always optimistic starting businesses, as we should be. You really need to be optimistic starting a business, otherwise there's not much point in doing it.
Right.
But that said, you also have to kind of plan out things. People need to plan out things, and so planning out and ensuring that there is preparation for the inevitable, in the sense of that we're not all mortal, or immortal. In that sense, we are all mortal, so eventually that's going to happen, and eventually we need to have plans for our loved ones so that it's a smoother transition in the loss, in that sense. So really, and that spells again into those operating agreements and bylaws, so that there's succession planning in that as well.
Nice.
Cool. Well, thank you, Tadha. This has been very helpful on how to register your business in Arizona. So let's recap what we've talked about so far this week. We talked about how to register your business in Utah,
Yeah.
how to register your business in Arizona, and next week we're going to talk about how to register your business in Nevada. So all of these webinars are being recorded. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And again, thank you, Tadha, for this wonderful information. And I was like, wait a minute, did I do this right when I did mine?
Right? We can always go back and change it if you've learned something and you want to modify something now.
Exactly. So this is what we're trying to do, just to educate you all about how to register your business in different states. I mean, all of these states have opportunities. So if you want to do work and start a business in Nevada or Utah, now you know how to do that and do it successfully the first time. Right?
Mystify the process, so you'll be clicking on the frequent user button, like, no, I got this, I can start another LLC, not a problem.
Exactly. So thank you, Michael, for attending our webinar. So hopefully you got something out of this, and good luck to you on your new business. I was thinking about your domain could be HBH. So you could go to Google GoDaddy to see if HBH is out there. I don't know. So you want to grab those domains before anyone grabs them.
I'm still really curious, what were you going to do with your name? What is Harmony by Heinrichs?
It's just something I came up with because the company I'm in now is called Serenity by Santiago. So it's pretty similar. And I just had that idea. I like the ring of it with my name. It's real similar, but it's personal. It's more personal to me.
Yeah. So Michael, so this week, this thing is being recorded. So if I were you, I would go and get that name before anyone else catches it. Okay.
Most definitely. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I will see everyone. Tadha and I will be back next Tuesday at the same time, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we're going to be talking about how to register your business in Nevada. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Hope you have a good week.
Have a good night. Thanks again.
Have a nice night.